When we talk about risk-taking behaviors and we talk about dopamine, whenever somebody does something that risk, a teenager, if they enjoy whatever it is that they're doing, dopamine will be released in the brain in the reward center, the nucleus accumbens, and it goes to the prefrontal cortex and it says, wow, I really like this activity. Now this activity could be eating ice cream, right? This activity could be riding on a roller coaster. This activity can be kissing your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whomever you're in love with. Whatever that activity is that produces the dopamine in the brain, reward center makes us feel good. If somebody's going to go out and drink, makes them feel good. It's a learned behavior that has biological connections to the brain. And so what I tell my juniors, and we talked about it today with the development of the brain, because they ask me, well, it's okay to drink in moderation. And here they are 16 years of age. Let's not even look at the legal aspects of this, but from a brain perspective, I want to know, well, how young is that person when they're first starting to drink? Because ages 15 and younger creates more of a risk to becoming chemically dependent by the time they're 21 years of age. So how young is that person when they first start to drink? How much is that person drinking when they're going out? How often is this person doing this, and for what length of time? And so with the brain and dopamine patterns, right? Patterns of behavior are hard to change. Brain is changing, dopamine is being released. I like that feeling of getting drunk, the reward center. I'm going to keep on doing it. So you've got the biological changes in the brain as well as patterns of behavior that are happening with the environmental stimuli. It's very easy for a teenager to become dependent and then addicted. Much more easier for a teenager than for an adult to go through that addiction.
When Kathy was speaking about the book Smashed, I remember when I read it that the girl says, my parents never knew what I was doing. So I think it is so important, even though we're so tired and busy with our lives as parents, that we know where our kids are, we know where they're going, we know who they're hanging out with. I'm lucky enough right now to have a senior that chooses not to drink. Every time he goes out the door, I say, remember you can call me, remember get out of town if they're getting high or drinking around you, you know, remember this. My husband said to me, why do you always tell him, honey, we don't have to worry about DJ, he's fine. Every time that kid goes out the door, he's at risk. You never know. So I just think it's so important for you to build your relationship with your kid, let them know some sort of a word that you can, you know, a code word that you can use, that they can get out of town and get a ride or meet them or, you know, get to a safe haven with you, through you.
Top 10 myths of underage drinking, okay? Number 10, at least alcohol is safer than other drugs. The reality check. Alcohol kills 6.5 times more youth than all illegal drugs combined. Number 9, if we just scare kids about the dangers, they won't drink. Scare tactics don't work, at least not for most people. That's because we all have a natural tendency to think, that won't happen to me. Research suggests that using scare tactics can actually do more harm than good, because they can unintentionally normalize or glamorize the risky behavior.
We need to keep in mind is that on a daily basis they are struggling to get through the day usually, to fit in, as Joyce was saying, to be part of something, to be socially successful. And this whole piece comes right into it. If you think about the messages, the media messages alone that kids are getting right now, that all have an influence over their decision making. We have celebrities, high-profile celebrities who have a little bit of a difficulty accepting their shortcomings, and unfortunately the messages that we get are that these people tend to get away with it. All right, let's use that term for lack of a better one at the moment. There doesn't seem to be a lot of accountability, and so these are some of the messages that kids are getting. We have YouTube, we have the internet and cell phones, and I don't mean to demonize any of them, but impulse control, when you combine impulse control with all of these other things, you really do have a cocktail for some trouble, and it's good to pay attention to that and to have conversations with your kids. I can't tell you how important it is to have these conversations. Kids need to know what your expectations are at an early age.
As soon as a kid starts to show they're not interested in school, they'll start cutting classes, they'll start using on school grounds outside of school, finding access to substances. Parents should be in constant communication with the school at the first sign of any of this. As much as your teen's going to push you away, the more you're involved, the greatest influence you will have over them. A huge thing within the community, when your kids were in middle school, if they were playing baseball or softball or any type of sport, chances are you went to their games. You knew the parents. Once they get to high school, they have a greater peer group. They meet new people. They might still be playing sports. You might not know the kids they're hanging out with. As parents, it's so important to get to know the parents of those kids. Stick to what you used to do in middle school. You knew the parents, you knew where they were going, you knew if someone was home. Your kids might not like the fact you're doing it, but it's one of the key protective factors is get to know who your kids are hanging out with, get to know their friends, and get to know their parents.